So things just got a whole lot worse for the Philadelphia Eagles, as after a year where the Birds' defense dropped from one of the best in the NFL in 2022 to one of the worst defenses in the league in 2023, the Eagles are in serious danger of losing their top player from that unit over the past 2 years, as they just gave this star pass rusher permission to seek a trade this offseason. But how do we even get to this point? Well, in this video, we're going to break down why this is happening, what it means for the Eagles going forward if a trade does happen, and also what the chances are of him staying with the team. And we won't waste any time, let's get straight into it. But to start this off, I want to take it back to last offseason because the whole situation that's playing out right now relates really well to something that did happen last offseason. So if you'll remember back to then, the Eagles had a lot of crucial decisions to make. They had 20 players who were set to become free agents, some of which were crucial to their success the season prior, and it was pretty evident that they weren't going to be able to keep them all. Plus, they had some guys who were set to earn contract extensions or restructures in some way, with the most notable example of this being Jalen Hurts, as he had just played at an MVP level the season prior, which was his third NFL season, so he had clearly earned himself a huge contract extension that offseason, and that's exactly what he got, as Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, and the Philadelphia Eagles signed Hurts to a record contract of $255 million over 5 years that included a no-trade clause. This, however, came at a later point in the offseason as it happened in April, so the Eagles had to go through the storm of free agency as well as the heat of trade season, having to take into account that they were going to have to pay Hurts this contract extension at some point. Plus, as they entered free agency, they also had to take into account that they were going to lose a lot of players because they simply just couldn't afford to keep everybody, and that didn't just apply to their free agents. A perfect example of this was cornerback Darius Slay, as he had a contract that had to be restructured, extended, or cut loose by way of trade or just release, as the Eagles just simply could not afford to keep him around on his current contract. Now, as it seemed like extension talks weren't coming along the way that either party was hoping for ahead of free agency, the Eagles then allowed Darius Slay permission to seek a trade. Free agency then started up, and it seemed like contract negotiations between Slay and the Eagles didn't make much progress at all, so the Eagles then decided to reportedly cut Darius Slay to reduce his massive cap hit, which we later found out that they never actually cut him, as later that night, the Eagles and Slay did end up agreeing on a contract extension that both reduced the huge cap hit and kept Slay in Philly for the long term. Now you may ask, Evan, why are you telling us this? Well, let me explain. Now this offseason, the Eagles are in a situation where maybe they don't have as many crucial free agents that they did last offseason, but their quarterback is now under a huge contract and they have to prioritize extending a couple crucial building blocks for the Eagles' future. The first one being wide receiver DeVonta Smith, who has clearly earned a massive extension with how he's played in the first 3 years of his career. I mean, the guy's had over 1,000 yards the past 2 years and almost got to that mark in his rookie season, and he's just an all-around incredible player. I think most Eagles fans have to agree that this should be the #1 priority for the Eagles this offseason, to extend Smitty. Now, DeVonta Smith actually spoke about the possibility of a recent extension, saying, quote, "It's all in God's hands. At the end of the day, extension or not, I'm going to have to come in and do what I have to do. It's God's timing, so he's going to put me in the right place at the right time." And I couldn't agree more with what Smitty said, but he also did make it clear that his desire is to remain in Philadelphia, saying, quote, "It's been amazing. I love playing in Philly. I don't think there's a better sports city in the US. I think Philly is top tier. Any sport, they're dialed in. That's what I love about it. I love that we all support each other. Basketball comes to football, football comes to basketball, and baseball, we all support each other." So I love that DeVonta loves Philly because, trust me, we love him too. And I'm sure the Eagles are on the same page as him and want to get an extension done as soon as possible. Same as how I'm sure that they want to get one done with star left guard Landon Dickerson as well. I mean, the guy's made the Pro Bowl the past 2 years, and he's been great all 3 seasons that he's been in the league, so he's obviously now up for a huge extension as well this offseason. And with the Eagles valuing offensive linemen the way that they do and Jason Kelce potentially retiring, I'm sure that this is going to be something that they want to get done this offseason as well. However, with the Eagles having to do these 2 huge extensions this offseason and in turn having to shell out a lot of money, they're going to have to be prepared to lose some guys. And it seems like easily the biggest casualty of this could be edge rusher Haason Reddick, as he's currently set to enter the last year of his 3-year, $45 million deal that the Eagles signed him to way back in the 2022 offseason, but he has well outplayed that contract. The guy's had 16 sacks in 2022 and 11 sacks this year, and he's turned himself into one of the best pass rushers in the entire NFL, so he clearly deserves more money and a contract extension at this point, with of course this being a contract year for him. However, it seems like the Eagles might not be the ones that are going to give it to him, as on Sunday morning just before the Super Bowl, Ian Rappaport reported that, quote, "Sources, Eagles All-Pro edge rusher Haason Reddick has received permission to seek a trade following another disruptive season featuring double-digit sacks. The 29-year-old with 27 sacks over 2 seasons in Philly could land somewhere else." And that is just a massive gut punch to the Eagles and fans, including myself, because Reddick has been the Eagles' best defensive player for the past 2 years, so losing him would just absolutely suck. And it's honestly kind of weird on the surface because the Eagles have historically, especially in Howie Roseman's tenure as the general manager, have been a team that really puts value in the trenches, specifically the defensive line. I mean, they always invest heavily at those positions, and Reddick, like I said, has clearly been not just the best of those guys for the Eagles, but the best of all their defenders. However, he's going to command probably over $20 million a year with his next contract, and he's set to turn 30 years old in September, which that's kind of around the age where some other edge rushers start to decline a little bit. Plus, Josh Sweat, the Eagles' other star edge rusher, who did definitely have a down year sack-wise, but still clearly is a great pass rusher, is entering the final year of his deal as well, and he's much younger at 26 years old, and he's also a draft product of the Eagles, so they may want to prioritize maybe extending him this offseason rather than Reddick, as well as making sure that DeVonta Smith and Landon Dickerson end up under contract for the foreseeable future, like I said earlier. Plus, the Eagles also have other needs that they just need to address and allocate money to in free agency. I mean, John Clark said, quote, "It's my understanding that the Eagles have other pressing needs and have limitations to spend more money on the defensive line right now." So that would then back up the explanation that the Eagles just simply can't afford to pay Reddick what he's worth. However, in that same tweet, Clark said, quote, "I'm told Eagles will only do a deal with the team if compensation and cap considerations works out for them. They're trying to find a win-win situation for both sides." And Zach Berman also said, quote, "My understanding is that the Eagles would only move Reddick if it makes sense, both with the compensation in return and if their cap objectives cannot be achieved with a new deal. This isn't a fire sale. Eagles are letting him explore market to see if there's a situation that makes sense with those considerations, but it's pretty clear that there's going to need to be a new deal, whether elsewhere or in Philly. The alternative is an unhappy player, which won't benefit either side." So at least that makes me feel a lot better about the whole situation, as essentially the Eagles are either going to trade Reddick and probably get a really good haul in return for him while having his contract restructured so that won't hurt the cap too badly, or, much more preferably, they're going to find a way to bring him back with a new contract that makes both sides happy, which I think almost perfectly parallels the whole Darius Slay situation from last year, so I'm really hoping that the Eagles and Reddick can actually come to a solution that involves him staying, which apparently could happen, but still, we do have to realize that there's also a very real chance that he is going to be traded. Now, I don't know what situation's more likely at this time, but I guess we'll see. But just going with the scenario that he does end up getting traded, that would mean that Nolan Smith would be forced into a much bigger role next year. Last year, he played just a very small percentage of the snaps, and when he was on the field, they dropped him back into coverage far too often, but with no Haason Reddick on the team, the small rush linebacker would then hypothetically be pushed into a much bigger role where he's on the field a lot more. I mean, remember, the guy was compared to Reddick himself coming out of college, so Nolan Smith would definitely be the guy that benefits the most from Reddick being traded. With that being said, we don't really know if he's ready for a bigger role like that. I mean, he's largely unproven because of the lack of playing time in 2023, and I don't know how confident I'd personally be in him if he was given that bigger role next year. But I guess if Reddick is traded, we're about to find out if Nolan Smith can actually play or not, and we better hope he can, because someone's going to have to replace at least some of Reddick's elite production, again, assuming he is traded, and Nolan is obviously going to be the first guy you look at when it comes to that. That being said, I really hope that the Eagles and Reddick can somehow find a way to come to an agreement on a deal that both keeps him in Philly, but also allows the Eagles to be flexible and make the other moves that they want to make this offseason. That being said, I don't want to be too optimistic because I know that a trade is a very real possibility. Now, you guys can give me your thoughts on Reddick seeking a trade down in the comments below, and also while you're at it, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any other Eagles coverage coming throughout this entire offseason, and also make sure you drop a like if you did enjoy this video and want to show some support. And if you want to watch another Eagles video, you can go check this one out right here. Now, with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.